Fortitude Fort.
Welcome back to Fortitude, folks. We are on location at the Sid Richardson Foundation today to talk about a special subject with my friend, President CEO Pete Geren. Pete, you've had a long history of helping, serving the public. Today's topic is no different. Today we are talking about a large problem, a crisis, if you will, in the state of Texas as far as in the educational system. Would you please describe some of the efforts that you're undergoing currently?
Mm-hmm. Well, I want to talk about a crisis that's hardly acknowledged but hidden in plain sight. Less than half of the kids in public schools in the state of Texas read at grade level. And that's been true for decades. Mm-hmm. And we continue to look the other way and ignore it. We've just accepted it as a given. And you don't see the sense of urgency about addressing it. I guess, tragically, for our kids, people have just gotten used to it. And we're part of an effort here in Tarrant County and coordinate with people around the state, in fact, some around the nation, to try to raise public awareness of the difference between student outcomes and public perception and even parent perception of student performance, to give parents the information they need to effectively support their kids and help their kids grow as students and develop the literacy skills, but also to inform civic leaders and elected officials and school board members of the situations. It's a problem that's rooted deeply in how we handle public education in this state. So we're trying to build coalitions of people, but based on first, know the facts. And the facts in the city of Fort Worth, which is 12 different school districts, not the Fort Worth ISD, that's less than half of our kids. Only 36% of our kids read at grade level, 36%. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people think, well, that's only a problem in the inner city. You can go up to Keller. 40% of the kids in the Keller ISD don't read at grade level. Keller ISD, a very high income, one of the fastest growing regions in our whole country, and certainly in our state. So it's a problem that reaches from inner city to suburb, from city to rural, and it's hidden in plain sight, but it's rare to find anybody that's aware of it.
I think there are plenty of folks out there, parents and maybe people that are older out of the adolescent childhood rearing, that would agree with you there's a problem in the educational system. Is there a way that this problem has been measured, testing and so on and so forth?
Well, we've done considerable polling, and there's a lot of national polling on it, but 92% of parents believe their children are reading at grade level, 92%. In some neighborhoods that we work, the real number is about 18%. And you ask the parents, why do they think that? Well, the kids get all A's and B's, regardless of whether they read at grade level. They get promoted to the next grade, regardless of whether they can read at grade level. And so we have this huge disconnect between what a parent, even very well-informed parents, believe to be true and what's actually true. And there's really 3 different sources of data on how our children are reading. We have pulled together a report in the city of Fort Worth for the council members based on STAR, which is the TEA, Texas Education Agency, right, assessment of grade level performance. Mm-hmm. They also have, a lot of people call it the gold standard. The Department of Education does a nationwide test called NAEP, N-A-E-P, and its results actually are more alarming than the STAR test. And then the school districts themselves do a test 3 times a year for every kid in their school system. Those show the same thing. So we have 3 validators that support the data that we use that has us so alarmed, and that's that only about 1/3 of our kids in the city of Fort Worth can read at grade level. And we also have done research and borrowed research from others that show what the consequences are. Then I can talk about that.
Could I ask you the consequences? What happens to a child if they're not reading at grade level, typically?
In the state of Texas, and I don't want to throw around too much jargon, but the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board, they follow every 8th grade student in the state of Texas from the time they enter the 8th grade till the time they turn 24. Every kid, it's between 300 and 400,000 kids a year. Less than half of our kids are reading at grade level. By the time those kids, and they've followed every 8th grade class since 1993, by the time those kids turn 24, 22% have a post-secondary credential. 22%. 78% don't. So 78% do not have a credential that has prepared them for anything other than a entry-level or minimum wage job. And we've also looked, and this is again based on TEA research, you go back to a child who's not reading at grade level in 3rd grade, and they followed 3 cohorts of 3rd grade students. 0.7% of those kids, when they graduate from high school, are measured as college ready. 0.7%. So we know a child who is not reading at grade level in 3rd grade, without intervention, and unfortunately without the parents even knowing, 0.7% of them are going to graduate high school college ready.
Right.
And so by ignoring that data point when this child is in the 3rd grade, the schools know it in the 1st grade because they have that 3 times a year assessment. But that's where the child ends up. 22% end up with a post-secondary credential. And that's statewide, but that's pretty much tracks in Tarrant County as well. So, the data is just irrefutable. A kid that cannot read in the 3rd grade without intervention, and again, tragically, without the parents even knowing it, their chances of being able to be self-supporting in life are pretty low.
Yes, sir.
Close to nil.
With all that irrefutable data that you're talking about, I mean, why are these kids being upgraded or graduating from 3rd to 5th to 6th, whatever grade? Why are they getting passed along and not held back or held to a higher standard? Where does the buck stop with this problem?
Well, most of these kids are on the AB honor roll. You have grade inflation that's masked that problem, and it's the rare kid that ever gets retained and isn't promoted. So I've not ever heard a good explanation for why the schools abdicate that responsibility. Report cards consider a lot of things: attendance, what kind of relationship they're well behaved in class. But report cards don't tell you if your child can read or not. And it's the report card, not your mastery of the content, that enables you to go to the next grade level.
Right.
And so it's based on that report card. And a report card's important. There's no doubt about it. It tells you a lot about your child. It just does not tell you whether or not your child can master the content for the grade that they are in or are being promoted into.
Fair question to ask. Is it simply a funding issue? These schools are getting state funding. If the kids continue through their educational process, the funds keep coming. If kids drop off because they're not passing the grade or passing the class, the funding goes away. Is that a simple thing you can answer, or is it not?
Well, now on the margins, the district has tried to incentivize better student outcomes with some additional funding, but that's very much on the margins. That's a tweak around the edges. But for the most part, a school gets paid for the child being in school, actually being in a seat. It's paid based on average daily attendance. The kid's absent, a kid's truant, the state doesn't get paid for that. So the compensation is based only on the child being there. And so the school is incentivized financially by the state to cut back on absenteeism and to address the truancy issue. But there is an inconsequential amount of the funding that is in any way tied to student outcomes. And the state of Texas, the legislature has looked at this and has tried to do more to incentivize student outcomes, but by and large now the system is as it is. And teachers, again, there's been some tweaks around the margins, but teachers are paid the same. It's all based on years of service, regardless of the outcomes of their children. And you have communities that, well, by and large, people just don't know. I give a lot of talks around town. Again, we've done polling, we've done focus groups, and people really don't believe it. The numbers are so at odds with what they know is true. And in politics, the easiest problem to solve is if the people know there's a problem and they aren't going to tolerate it. The next easiest is there is a problem and the people don't know about it and you can point it out to them and solve it. The hardest problem is one where not only do the users of this government service, parents, not know there's a problem, they believe there is not a problem. 92% think their kids are at grade level.
My kids are getting A's and B's.
Yeah.
There's no problem.
So they're resistant to really any effort to shake up the system, because if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And one of our big efforts now is outreach, and we're using social media, we're using public appearances, we're meeting with parents and ask them to just examine the data. In the Fort Worth ISD, you are unable to get your STAR results. You can ask for the tri-annual report on how your kid's doing, but it's very hard to read. So it's virtually impossible for a parent to get that information. Most parents, 90% plus, don't know that information even exists, so they don't know to ask for it. But even if they sought it out, it's not available. And we believe that the biggest impediment to improvement and sustainable improvement in public education is the parents got to know. We got to close this awareness gap. And in 2023, 2024 now, with all the technology we have, this information is accessible to every single parent. They don't know it's there,
right?
And if they knew it was there, it's not easy to get. So we've worked with the state legislature, we've worked with the TEA to try to simplify that so parents can get that information. We believe it's a right for parents to be able to get that. If the state owns information on your kids, you ought to be able to get it. And functionally, there's a need to know, because only when the parents know are they going to start operating effectively on behalf of their kids.
Right.
Whether it's making sure that the child does his homework, helping the child manage school and life and extracurriculars, reading to their children at night. I mean, there's so many things a parent can do, but they don't make it a priority because they think everything's going great.
Right.
You can have a child that's on the AB honor roll and you think, I don't want to hassle him about his homework. I'd rather enjoy the evening with her. And we have real cases, and we actually, from our focus groups, ask parents, well, what would you do if you learned your child couldn't read at grade level? And one mother said, well, both my kids take dancing my girls at the YMCA. If I learned that, they also offer literacy tutoring after school, I'd put them in that. One mom said, my son does basketball league on Saturday morning. My school has tutoring on Saturday morning. I would put him in that. But because they don't know, they don't do what a parent does, and that's make decisions in the best interest of their child. It's because they don't know.
Right. I can only imagine with the weight you talk about of grades for any kid, grades matter to the parent. How do you make it a parent aware, any parent whose kid's making A's and B's, how do you make them aware there's a problem here that you're unaware of just because your kid's doing great on paper, on the grade books, you're not up to par reading-wise? I can only imagine how difficult a task that might be.
Yeah, it's very hard. And nobody's really figured it out yet. We're trying a bunch of things that people haven't tried before, but a lot of it is talking to people like you that have an audience and raising this issue. We have a pretty aggressive social media campaign going on right now. We support a website called atgradelevel.org, and a parent can log into that website and find out if their child is reading
At gradelevel.org.
At gradelevel.org. And we support a parent organizing group called Parent Shield, and that is parent-led, parent staffed, and they're going door to door and saying, our babies can't read. And I said, well, what are you talking about? Well, would you sit with me for a minute and let's log in and find out how your child's doing. And so we're from the grassroots level. We're also looking at other types of media that you normally associate with a political campaign. But the parents get that report card, every 6 weeks that says, JW's doing fine. And so
They never said that, Pete, by the way.
the teacher may have said that just so your parents wouldn't have bugged them, but they get a good report card, and so it's hard when they get that and the schools communicate things are going well. You have the whole system built around that message that things are going pretty good, and so nobody's figured it out, and because nobody's figured it out, we have less than half the kids in Texas aren't reading at grade level, and the legislature never talks about it. The State Board of Education never talks about it, and I'm just enough of a politician. I've spent so much of my life in politics. Government responds to the people, and if the people are complacent, if the people are quiet, government goes on its merry way, and parents don't know. In fact, parents get bad information, and they are complacent, and they don't hold the schools accountable. So we've got numerous organizations that we support. Fort Worth Education Partnership is an outstanding organization, and it produces materials like this. That this can't tell you how your child is doing, but it can tell you how the school your child attends is doing. And we have schools in the city of Fort Worth where 9% of the kids are reading at grade level.
Oh, wow.
9%.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I'm not talking about the Fort Worth ISD, I'm talking about some of these other 12 school districts that serve our kids. And it is so at odds with what people believe that you have to tell them over. No, this can't be true. This can't be true. And then even the schools have this stock answer. Well, that's just one test one day. Well, superintendent, what about the MAP tests you do 3 times a year? Do they differ from this? Oh no, they're pretty much exactly the same. Okay, so it's not one test one day. It's at least 4 times a year. And then the NAEP test, the gold standard. It says the same thing, right? Yeah. So it's not one test one day. My kid may have had a bad day, but a lot of people brush it off with comments like that. One test one day. My kid's not a good test taker. Everybody has a bad day. Well, that does not align with the facts. The facts are it's 3 different tests. They all show the same thing, and the ones that are given triannually are given by the school districts themselves, and they know the kids. It's not a detached third party. They create a good environment for the child to take the test. So unfortunately, because parents are already kind of believe that the report card, and then the school says, well, it's just one test one day, they think, okay, I'll accept that. And so that's really a hard thing to overcome. And I think in my political background, I know you can't persuade somebody with one conversation. Particularly one where not only do they not know there's a problem, they think there's not a problem. And so we're drawing on the experience of people that have been successful in the political arena and using those kind of tactics to say, wake up, there's a problem, there's a real problem. And it's undeniable, it's irrefutable, all the data supports it. And if you don't want to look at grades, look at student outcomes when they turn 24.
Right.
That is purely objective data. It's not one bad day. It is when the kid turns 24, does he or she have a post-secondary credential? Is that a state certification, an associate's degree, a bachelor's degree. And this system, where less than half the kids are reading at grade level, that's what we're getting. 22% of the kids have a credential that is going to prepare them for something other than a minimum wage job.
Just amazing. Well, globally, I think it's pretty well known that we're not the most educated country out there. Maybe we're falling further and further behind as time goes on. I don't want to put blame because I don't know, but we all have our opinions on where the blame might lie. It's hard to put blame on teachers because they're underpaid. It's a difficult task, but who's to blame for this, Pete? This lack of reading skills and education. Who's to blame?
Government delivers to the people what the people demand, and that's a fact. I was in government for a long time. The squeaky wheel gets the grease, and if you can put lubricant on the wheel without fixing the problem, the wheel doesn't squeak. Until it's public education. I guess it's the biggest industry in the state of Texas. It's huge. It's got 5 million kids. It's got 400,000 teachers. I don't know how many administrators. In Fort Worth ISD alone, it's $1 billion business, counting capital, their capital investments. It's a huge, huge business, like Social Security or like Public Works or like the fire department or the police department. The only reason all of those do a good job for citizens is because people demand it. Mm-hmm. And if we've got potholes, we know it. It breaks your axle. You complain to the city. People don't know they aren't getting what they think they're getting. And I think of the essential services to make any city work. You got to have electricity, got to have gas, you got to have transportation, you got to have sanitary, you got to have people pick up the garbage, and you got to have public education. And we've done polling on that. We polled 500 people about what they believe, parents and non-parents, the importance of public education. They say it's connected to public safety, they say it's connected to public health, they say it's connected to home values, they say it's connected to economic development. And it's connected, we all know, intuitively it's important to all of those things. And we believe that it's okay. But if the electricity goes off, what do? We start calling Encore, complaining. If that doesn't work, we complain to the city. If the public health clinic is dirty, people are getting sick, people are not being treated well, we complain to the government and they fix it because you know what's happening. If people don't deal with the sanitary issues, they don't pick up our trash, we know it and we complain. If the fire response time is too slow, neighborhood associations raise Cain and they get it fixed. If the police response is too slow, government works because people demand a certain level of service. In this case, the parents don't know. And it would be like any other government service where the person who consumes the good is unaware of the deficiency. But we'd never be satisfied if the electricity worked half the time, right, or if half of our roads were safe, or if our gas operated half of the time, or if the police showed up half of the time, or the firefighters show up half the time. We'd never accept that.
Right.
But we're accepting this absolutely essential public service. It's connected to all of those things. And it delivers for our kids less than half the time. So I think it isn't really trying to blame anybody. It all begins with the parents knowing. And until the parents know, I've had school board members say, well, I don't hear anything about that issue. The people that come to our school board meetings want to talk about transgender bathrooms or CRT or DEI, all very important issues. And I've said to them repeatedly, if you told those parents their kids couldn't read, this hall would be filled with parents demanding something better. But the parents don't know. And so those who care deeply about these other very important issues are there. But the people, 98% of parents believe learning to read is the highest academic priority. That's what our polling shows. They believe that a school that less than half the kids are learning to read deserves an F. But we know it's important. We know parents think it's important. And we know that parents get information that keeps their wheel from squeaking. And until the parents know they're not going to take action, and until they take action, it's going to continue to be a large governmental program that is not held accountable, doesn't achieve its the possibilities. And this isn't true all over the state. I want to say this. Less than half of the kids, or about half the kids in the state, read at grade level. We have school districts in Texas, however, that are as poor as any school district in the state of Texas. And they've got twice as many kids reading at grade level than some other school districts.
So it's not an economic thing.
No, it's not. And they're resourced equally well. People say, well, what do they do differently? Well, if I were on the school board, I'd be on a bus or airplane yesterday and go down there and say, well, what do you do, San Juan Far Alamo, to make it better? I'd drive to Dallas and say, why is it better there? Your kids fall in the same economically disadvantaged category as ours, but more of them read at grade level there. But it's only when parents know this fact about the most important thing to them in the world that we're going to see, one, parents doing what they need to do for their kids at home, but also parents holding the system accountable. And until that happens, we're going to have some bright spots with some great leadership here and there. But by and large, it's going to be a government service that does not deliver on excellence. The parents got to know.
Yes, sir.
And it's hard for the parents to know. And that's our crusade is.
Very good.
And people say, well, what will they do? I'd say, let's start with letting them know and then stand back and watch.
Right there. Pete, is it, we talk about the parents a lot. Is it fair to put some blame, a lot of blame on the parents, because the parents ultimately, they're the ones seeing the child every night, and I know not everybody has a perfect setup,
think
but
to even use the word blame is constructive at all.
okay.
Parents have to rely on information from credible sources to make decisions on how they use their time. We all use our time to support our kids, and time's precious, and we use it in the way we think can best help our kids. We know from our own personal experience and anybody you talk to, and supported by polling and focus groups, that if you tell parents this, it's going to change their behavior. And we hear, I can't tell you how many politicians will say to me, well, those parents don't care. And I'd say, who are those parents that don't care? And I'd say, you care, right? Your friends, do they care about their kids? No, oh yeah, they care. Well, who are these people that you think don't care?
Right.
It's somebody you've never met, right? And so they kind of get off the hook because, well, they don't care. And so it makes us feel okay. We do know they care. Maybe, I don't know if it's 1 out of 10,000, but it's a very small percentage. And no government program works perfectly for everybody. But most parents, the overwhelming majority of parents, do care. And if you give them the right information, they're going to do what's best for their kids. If you hide that information from them, they're not. And they still may invest huge amounts of time. We've got a lot of actually we have some interviews with people, some recorded, and they talk about when they found out their child couldn't read at grade level. And these are deeply involved parents and kids doing all sorts of great things. And for whatever reason, they stumbled into that information. And some are just heartbroken. I was asked by one of my board members to meet with an employee in his organization, because they have two children in public schools in one of the 12 districts that serves Fort Worth. And they are the most involved parents. During COVID, they're people of very modest means, but they had their children get tutors in summer. They had them going to summer school. And one of my board members said, well, Pete's doing some work on this at grade level. How are your children doing at grade level? And he said, well, I don't know. And I said, well, I'll put you in touch with him. So I called him, and we actually walked it through how the steps to find out. Neither child was at grade level.
Interesting.
And they were heartbroken. And they said, well, what can we do? And I said, well, one thing is the state is obligated to give you tutoring in small groups for your kids in those subjects. And if they don't do that, they're obligated to give you a master teacher in the subject your child isn't at grade level. And this was over a weekend that we went through it. And he said, well, my wife and I are going to be at that school on Monday because we're not getting either. So people just don't know how we get a critical mass to know. That's a challenge. Nobody's never pulled it off before.
Could you speak to the state of teachers in our state? Is it something you're up to speed on? I mean, our teachers, we all generally know they're underpaid, probably overworked. Are we getting quality caliber teachers, or high caliber teachers these days, or is teaching a kind of a dying profession?
I think we have great teachers. And you have school districts where the teachers in those school districts are delivering above grade level results for their kids. Same pay structure, comparable student body by any demographic standard. And the school districts with strong leadership, the school districts with good parent engagement, the school districts that hold themselves accountable do well. So we've got great teachers. They're committed. They wake up every morning and want to help these kids. But they'd be better helped. Their parents would be working with them if the parents knew the truth. And the parents don't know. Every teacher will tell you, gosh, if the parents were more involved. Well, we know that if they told the parents the truth about how the kid was doing, the parent would be more involved. But they don't. Fort Worth ISD is an example of one of the school districts where it's very hard to get information on how your child is performing on these assessments. So great teachers, they aren't paid what they're worth. They need to be paid more. I don't understand why the state legislature can't get this done and get the pay raise. But the system works in certain places. There's no reason it shouldn't work every place. And the sleeping giant is the parent body that's fed sleeping pills. We call them report cards. And so I think, people in this political climate particularly want to blame people. Human beings, basically good. Parents, when it comes to their kids, will do anything for their kids, whatever it takes. And a system can't work if the parents aren't informed and engaged. It's just a question of transparency. Access, this information is hidden behind an opaque screen, and parents don't know. So teachers would love to have the support of more parents, But there are a lot of principals that won't allow a teacher to give a grade below a C without coming to see the principal. You've got a lot of schools that don't even use at grade level material for the kids, so they don't stand a chance. And kids in the 4th grade, they're using 2nd grade material. Kids making all A's and B's, parents happy. Parent doesn't come to the teacher conference because everything's great. And then they may stumble into the information that the child is not at grade level. But if they live long enough and the child lives long enough, 22% of them, their kids are going to be able to support themselves. And then they'll look back over those 23 years and think, you know, how did this happen?
Right.
Tell you another anecdote that I think is so powerful. A man who was principal at Dunbar, he gave a talk. This was a Fort Worth Report, hosted this forum. And he was the principal at Dunbar when they started this aviation tech program. Great program, great materials, great curriculum, big event in the city, you know, big ribbon cutting. And in the kids that were, it's a school choice, so you could have attended it from anywhere in the Fort Worth ISD. The kids that were in the Dunbar Pyramid, he said most of them signed up for it and they dropped out because they didn't have the reading skills to read the training manuals to do it.
Wow.
And he said, and we knew that in 3rd grade. And we knew they couldn't read in 4th grade. And we knew they couldn't read in 5th grade. And so they get to be 9th grade. We offer them this opportunity. It has them excited, their parents excited, and they can't read the materials. We knew it in the 3rd grade. But the system is flashing bright red warning signal in the 3rd grade, and we just look the other way. Again, I spent a lot of time in politics. People ask me, what's the most powerful lobby in America? I can tell you, and the 2nd place is a distant second, and that's the AARP, American Association of Retired Persons. I would never join it, but it represents geezers like me. And if you mess with or even talk about anything that is going to change this system that's absolutely essential for the well-being of my generation. In the old days, you'd say the phone would ring off the hook. I had a friend in Congress, he said, don't mess with seniors. I said, well, why is that? They have time and telephones, TNT. But they do that because their economic well-being and their health care is absolutely dependent upon that program. And they are the most effective advocates for making sure that system delivers for them. Well, kids are as important to parents as those checks are to my generation.
Yes, sir.
And if parents knew what the AARP does a good job of doing for we geezers, or us geezers, I guess, the parents would be just as effective advocates for reform as we geezers are. But they don't know.
Right.
So it's their economic security, it's their health security, and they are a force to be reckoned with. They can stop a legislative initiative in its tracks and punish everybody who even contemplated it. Kids are just as important to parents as that check is to my generation, but they don't know.
Right.
So to me, it's a system that is sustained as it is because the consumer of the product, the parent, doesn't know. And it's the sleeping giant. If they do know, they would be as powerful as the AARP. But they're not because they don't know.
Well, if we can stay local for a second and without lobbing blame to anybody, the 4th ISD, as you just mentioned, surely they know the problem exists. I can only imagine they see the data. Mm-hmm. Why are they not being held to task more, or why aren't they? The parents obviously need to be aware and move like they need to move. But why is the
parents don't know?
Why is the 4th ISD not doing something more than the current? Is that a?
We focus on 12 school districts that serve the city of Fort Worth, and again, Keller ISD About 40% of the kids don't read at grade level. And why is there no political outcry there? It's true every place. It's the parents don't know. Superintendents have a hard time doing anything hard because the parents don't know. And you see this, Fort Worth ISD contemplating closing schools. Well, that's darn hard. Parents probably would be more likely to stand behind the superintendent in those very hard decisions if the superintendent said, only 22% of the kids that go to that school can read. And we're wasting resources because we've got a half-empty school and a half-empty school and a half-empty school. We got 3 principals, we got 3 counselors. We can put them all together and we could put more resources into every child if we consolidate those schools. Because right now, most of the kids there can't read at grade level. Parents, stand with me, help me do something hard. Without the parents knowing that, when the superintendent tries to close schools, you're going to have people screaming bloody murder. You're going to destroy our community. If the parents knew, they would stand with a superintendent that's trying to do hard things. So it's kind of a chicken and an egg thing. Schools don't do a good job of communicating. But I really want to caution you and anybody listening. If we think of this as a Fort Worth ISD issue, we're missing the boat in a huge way. In Tarrant County, we've got one school district, and that's South Lake Carroll, that has 90% of the kids reading at grade level. No other school district in Tarrant County can claim that. No other school district in Tarrant County comes close. And I'm talking about the school districts that are in the most affluent suburbs in Tarrant County. So it's not an inner city problem. Parents are sitting on the sideline in Keller just like they're sitting on the sideline in here in Fort Worth because they don't know. So I think we almost have to take one step back and make sure the people who the service means the most to know what's happening to their kids. And until that happens, the system is never going to arrange itself in a way that, in budget, in a way that makes the most difference for kids. So if you get paid the same amount no matter what happens, teachers get promoted the same regardless of what happens. If parents, all the kids get promoted and all the kids make A's and B's, the system just goes merrily along.
Right.
But the information, if you can get people to believe it, it's world changing.
Yes, sir. Well, Pete, what is South Lake Carroll doing different? Do we know this? Is it because the parents are aware? Is that the answer? Parents are more aware there than maybe other places in Tarrant County?
I couldn't answer it. South Lake Carroll, and all I know about South Lake Carroll is I do know the data, and I know what I read in the newspapers. In one of the 3 parts of the Air Force Code is excellence in all you do. And South Lake appears to just demand excellence in all it does.
Right.
In athletics and academics and extracurriculars. I don't know what makes it different. If I were on a school board someplace, I'd want to know. But more than, it's the most affluent school district in the state. So probably the lessons for the rest of our county could better be learned by looking at Dallas ISD or looking at Houston ISD or looking at McAllen ISD, school districts that serve a population that's demographically similar. And it's different for every kid. It's different if you come from an impoverished family than it is if you family with substantial means. But the family with substantial means that goes to Keller would support their child differently if they knew the child wasn't reading at grade level. But so I don't think that if I were in a leadership position in a Tarrant County ISD, that I would look for school districts that are performing, that serve similar populations, that have poverty issues, that have hunger issues, that have single parent issues, unemployment issues. So many of the challenges that are associated with life in populations with low economic means. So I don't know why South Lake is able to do as well as South Lake does, but South Lake and Aledo win the state championship in football. They win the state championship in baseball. They win the academic championships. It's just like that Air Force creed, excellence in all you do.
Yes, sir.
So who knows? But where I'd start looking for lessons is other school districts that also serve kids that have the same economic challenges as our kids do. But you're not going to look very hard if everybody's happy, because it's going to require doing some hard things.
Right.
And if you're not going to do hard things unless people stand behind you. You go to school board meetings, people that are down there are contractors and lobbyists for contractors. And then some parents are civic activists that are focusing on everything except can our kids read? So squeaky wheel gets the grease in government, and the wheel that should be squeaking because our kids can't read, not squeaking. And we're committed, and we've got a lot of partners here. Fort Worth Education Partnership is our greatest ally, with a great leader in Brent Beasley. We're trying to give the parents the information they need to know, they have a right to know, and it's frankly just unimaginable in 2024 that the government could have information about my kid and I can't get it.
Yes, sir.
It's a 12-click process. So
what was the tipping point for you, Pete? Why did you get involved in this effort? Why does this matter so much to you?
Mm-hmm. Well, I had the great blessing to get to come work for this foundation, and I have a board that public education is their absolute highest priority. It's always been an interest of mine, but I had never worked in the field at all. And when I went to a lot of education conferences, I heard about a lot of the work that was being done, and millions, tens of millions of dollars being poured into and then I just saw that nothing ever changed. And about 6 or 7 years ago, I started looking at this data, and I thought, well, I don't even believe this. This can't be true. Less than half the kids in the state of Texas can read at grade level. It can't be true. And then when I dug deeper and deeper and deeper, no, it is true. And you got a lot of schools where less than 20% read at grade level. And why aren't people screaming bloody murder? This is, if you have older listeners watching, Bob Dole said, one of his famous lines in his campaign was, "Where's the outrage?" The Bob Dole line came to my mind. Where's the outrage?
Right.
Kids can't read. Where is the outrage? Why are parents upset? And then we started doing this research. Well, parents don't know. And we don't have any outrage because the parents don't know. I don't think they're intentionally deceived, but the system is set up to keep them complacent. And it's like a shot of Valium a few times a day. And so I think, and I have this image in my mind of a third grade kid getting on a school bus. And the parent is there, honey, you got your lunch. Okay, make sure you keep track of your coat. Don't lose your backpack. Have a great day at school. And that kid's going off to a school where 1 in 10 kids are reading at grade level. And as a parent, thinking I'm putting my child on a bus that is going to take this kid to a school where 1 out of 10 kids reading at grade level, and nobody's ringing the fire alarm. And the kid comes home, honey, how was your day at school? At this school where only 1 in 10 kids can read at grade level. I think if the parent knew that, they wouldn't accept it.
Yes, sir.
And many people talk about it in terms of workforce. And you get to that statistic I talked about earlier, 22% get a post-secondary credential. Well, that's a workforce issue. And that should galvanize the business community. And the business community to know that 0.7% of the kids that can't read at grade level are going to be college ready. That ought to galvanize the business community. But for me, it's an issue of morality. That third grade child deserves a chance. And we know from the data, if that kid ain't reading in the third grade, 0.7%
Right.
that he's going to be college ready. That's a great moral failing on the part of our society. It is a catastrophic moral failure. Not only have we failed the child, but we have failed our public, because we have not given this child the resources that she deserves to enable them to have a chance to be self-sufficient. But to me, it's a moral failing. We got a duty to that child, and we're not fulfilling it. And the consequences are catastrophic, and we know they are. We know kids who can't read end up in prison at a higher rate. We know kids that can't read at third grade drop out. We know kids that can't read in third grade more propense to use illegal drugs. We know it. It's a great moral failing. Yes, on the part of society, in my opinion. And my wife jokes, I can't take you anywhere. That's all you talk about. We got to do better for those kids. And I think the only way we can do it is going to be through informing the parents. And this sleeping giant is parent power. I don't think anything we can do is going to make it happen any more than Social Security would have survived if it weren't for we determined geezers. Politicians would have picked it clean, but we won't let them, and we're going to have to face up to the facts on that matter. But kid is as important to the parent as that economic security is to a senior. And parents wouldn't stand for it if they knew. If the parents don't know, government will just continue to do what government does, which is path of least resistance.
Future, hypothetically, if every child locally, statewide, nationwide in this country reads at a grade level or higher, what does this country look like different than today?
It's hard to project how different it would be, but right now 0.7% of the third graders who can't read end up college ready. What if that number was 50%? So instead of that 0.7% ending up heaven knows where, you've got kids that turn 18 with promise. It affects their community, it affects their children, it affects their grandchildren, it affects the society. It would be a different place. And it would be a society where we measure up to the responsibilities we have as Americans to every kid in this country. I had a friend whose dad went through school, first in his family to go to college, went through on the GI Bill. and he talked about his family reunion. First person in his family to go to college. His siblings didn't go to college, and they had this family reunion. And when you got to children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, there were 60 people in the room. The fact that that man got to go to college meant that these 60 kids in the room, their life was forever different. You get this ball rolling, and its the impact is exponential. And that's just, 50 years. That's one person that went to college, that in 60 lives were different. So we've got 160,000 kids in the city of Fort Worth, and 38% of them read at grade level. And we know what the dropout rate is. What if we doubled the number reading at grade level? We cut the dropout rate at half. We doubled the college readiness. We tripled the number of kids that were college or career ready. It changes everything.
Right.
Changes everything. You wouldn't have the chamber worrying about educated workforce.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the crime problems would go away. A lot of the health problems would go away. You got to read. Got to be able to read.
Yes, sir. Well, last question, Pete, and we'll get out of your hair. But just to reiterate the message here, easy takeaway for parents. Anybody listening to this or seeing this, what's a parent to do who doesn't know and is learning this for the first time? What should a parent do to be a part of the solution?
Parents should take the steps necessary to find out how their child is doing. Look beyond the report card. The report card doesn't tell you enough. It doesn't tell you everything, and it doesn't tell you anything about whether or not your child is performing at grade level. Look beyond the report card. Seek out that information. Demand the school provides it to you. And if you can't get it from the school, and a lot of schools won't give it to you, they'll explain it away. Just keep pushing. You need that. Parents need that information, and it'll change behavior. Parents will be able to do their job. Parents need to know. They have a right to know. Right now, they don't know. So message to parents is, you're probably in that 92% where you think everything's okay. Well, about half of you are right. The other half are wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Don't presume you're in the right half.
Yes, sir. Pete Geren, thank you very much for the time.
Well, thank you, JW.
Another episode of Fortitude. Appreciate your listening in. Until next time.
Fortitude, Fort Worth.